Welcome to today's rundown. I'm Miko Santos. We examine several critical developments reshaping both the global economic landscape and Australia's domestic policy environment. From escalating international trade tension to evolving housing policy proposal and energy markets intervention, we'll provide the context and analysis to help you understand the implication of today's events. The global economic landscape faced significant disruption today as China announced a retaliatory tariff of 84% on U.S. import, matching the scale of President Trump recently implemented 104% tariff on Chinese goods. This reciprocal trade action represents a substantial intensification in economic tension between the world's two largest economies. US President Donald Trump has put 90-day pause on his reciprocal tariff just an hour after they had been placed on import from dozens of countries.
Announcing an additional tariff on China. The tariff on China will now go up to 125% because China imprudently decided to retaliate against the United States. And as I said at the podium yesterday, when you punch at the United States of America, President Trump is going to punch back harder. In that same vein, we have had more than 75 countries from around the world reach out to President Trump and his team here at the White House to negotiate better trade deals for the American worker. We have been overwhelmed with the amount of requests from countries around the world. I'll let the Secretary speak to that. We will continue with the tailor-made negotiations that I spoke about yesterday. In the meantime, there will be a 90-day pause on the reciprocal tariffs as these negotiations are ongoing, and the tariff level will be brought down to a universal 10% tariff.
All trading partners except China will now be subject to the same baseline of 10% tariff rate, rather than the additional rates announced by the President at Liberation Day last week. Australian stocks are set to surge after U.S. indices rocketed higher on Donald Trump's tariff pause, with the charges to be held at 10% for most countries, while China has been hit with an even higher levy. On Wall Street, the S&P 500 climbed to 9.5% for its best session since 2008. Meanwhile, in a significant policy announcement at National Press Club yesterday, Greens leader Adam Bandt outlined a structural reform package targeting Australia's housing affordability challenges. The proposal represents targeted approach to negative gearing and capital gain tax concessions, distinguishing between different categories of property investors. The policy framework maintained existing tax arrangement for single property investors, what Bandt termed mom and dad investors, while modifying benefit for those with multiple investment properties. According to the modeling released by the Greens, this approach could potentially enable home ownership for up to 850,000 additional Australians.
The Greens plan would see negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount scrapped for wealthy property investors, but preserved for what are often called mum and dad investors with one investment property. John Howard left us a time bomb. It needs to be diffused. But we have to do it in a way which recognises that there are huge numbers of people who are using this scheme to look after their retirement, people who've made plans for their future based on the levers available to them. These people aren't billionaires or wealthy property investors. It's not their fault that the system is so broken.
The announcement positioned housing policy as a central election issue and signals potential policy priorities in a minority government scenario. Housing economists note that the proposal addresses both supply and demand side factors influencing housing affordability. Meanwhile, opposition leader Peter Dutton has unveiled a comprehensive energy policy focused on domestic gas reservation. The proposal aims to decouple Australian gas price from international markets through regulatory intervention that would direct between 50 and 100 petajoules of gas to domestic market. Independent economic modeling by Frontier Economics projects that policy could reduce wholesale gas price by approximately 23%, translating to a 7% reduction in household gas bills and 15% savings for industrial users. The approach represents a significant market intervention designed to address energy affordability concerns.
People into the market. It's about reducing the cost of producing steel here. It's about reducing the cost of bricks. It's about reducing the cost for farmers and for manufacturers across the economy. If we can do that, and I believe absolutely we can, the independent analysis demonstrates that we can, then over the short to medium term, we can bring prices down across the economy. So the reduction in petrol price applies across the economy. The tax policy that Mr Albanese's thought about and won't start for 15 months is not going to provide the support, the structural change that we need to fix this problem. And the
Energy market analysts note that while the policy addressed immediate price pressures, questions remain about long-term investment incentives and regulatory frameworks necessary for a sustainable market operation. Industry stakeholders have expressed mixed response, with manufacturing sector generally supportive while energy producers have raised concern about the production incentives. On the other hand, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has defended his government economic management approach, emphasizing achievements in inflation reduction and employment growth amid challenging global conditions. Speaking at a press conference in Sydney, he highlighted the reduction in inflation from over 6% to 2.4% while maintaining unemployment historically low levels.
That the government changed. Let me remind everyone that under my government, in the last 3 years, people have been going through cost of living pressures like the rest of the world with global inflation. But inflation had a 6 in front of it, it's now down to 2.4. Employment has grown with more than 1 million jobs. Unemployment's at 4.1%. Real wages have increased. The last 5 quarters in a row, they went backwards. 5 quarters in a row when they were in office. Interest rates have started to come down. They started to rise before the last election, and we turned a $78 billion deficit into a $22 billion surplus, followed that up with a $15 billion surplus, and
economic analysis suggests Australia's fiscal position remains stronger than many comparable economies, with 2 consecutive budget surplus providing some buffer against emerging global uncertainties. However, challenges remain in addressing a structural budget pressure and navigating increasingly volatile international economic conditions. As the global markets continue to react to Trump tariff and Australian election campaign intensify, the economic landscape remains highly uncertain. Thank you for joining us for today's rundown. For the latest news and analysis, visit redmencari.com and subscribe to our newsletter. You can also support our work by following us on all major podcasting platforms. I'm Miko Santos. Stay informed and see you again.